Hi everyone, my name is Matt, also known as UKAstroNut, and today I'm joined by Scott Balfour, who is a PhD student. I'm just going to be talking to him about what it's like to be a PhD student, what kind of things he does, what his kind of research includes. So if you're interested in a PhD or research and stuff like that, you can watch this and you can find out a little bit. So Scott, just really briefly, what is it you do here?
So I'm a theoretical star former in the star formation group here.
Okay, so what's a theoretical star former?
So there's two ways you can go about trying to work out how stars form. So you can, and probably the way that people are most familiar with is looking into the universe, looking at places where stars are forming and trying to work out what is going on. And that's nice and good, but it's very difficult to get all of the physics involved because there's a lot of underlying physics, little processes that lead to big changes that you can just assume happen because you can't watch one of these regions form over a million years. We're not around for that long. So what I do is I speak to my observer colleagues, they tell me what they've seen, what physics they think is involved. I then go away, create mathematical models which translate into computational simulations, and we can use these simulations to include all the physics we think is happening, run the 10 million year evolution, which we couldn't do observationally, and then see if we get the right answer. And if we don't, we can say, well, we haven't got the right answer, so there's more physics we need to put in. And we think this is probably the physics that would go into it, and then we'll speak to observers and they'll go, that would make sense, and then we kind of build on a picture of what's going on.
Okay, so you do these simulations and then what, do you just get a number at the end, or do you get pictures or videos or what?
Yeah, so we start with initial conditions, which are all the positions, velocities, masses of the particles involved in the simulation. We then put them into our simulations and our programs. So we've got two, which is CERN, which is the Welsh word for star. And we've also got Gandalf, which is a new one, and Gandalf is an abbreviation of some long title.
It's just like acronyms.
Yeah.
They like all these fun. They try to make them sound like words like Gandalf and Frodo and things like this.
I think there was, yes, anyway, let's not go into that. But yeah. And so, yes, we put them into this code, we run it for several weeks, and then we get results out, which again are tables of numbers. But what we do is we kind of want to track what's going on in time. So for maybe every million years, every mega year, we'll get a snapshot out, which is a table of data, and it contains again all the particle positions, velocities, what new stars have formed, and what particles they're comprised of. So we can track individual particles back to their stars. So you can see, this star is formed of particles from this region, and so on. And we can then use that data to look at the statistics. For example, we might want to know how big the stars are forming compared to their environment, or are there too many small stars and things like that. We can also produce pictures, which are good because you can't, just from numbers alone, get a feel for what's going on physically sometimes. You have to look at the structure and the actual morphology of the structures. So morphology is just the shapes, basically. And that's really important because computers can't always pick that out, where humans are very good at picking up patterns like that. So sometimes it's negative because we see things that aren't there, but that can be verified later on. But we can then take them pictures, run them through another type of technology, which is called radiative transfer, which is another type of code, which models the photons coming from the stars. And we can actually look at what different abundances of, in that has all the chemical models, and then we can look what actually we would see if we would take our picture, put it into space, what would we see, and compare it to real observation, and let us really see if we're getting it right.
Yeah. So you're a New Scientist recently for this kind of work, or weren't you in magazines and press releases and stuff for it?
Yeah, there was a conference in June, at the end of June, where I presented my work, and from that we did a press release on my first year's work. And that was picked up by New Scientist and a few other magazines who took the work and explained it for a more wider audience, which is quite interesting.
So did you have to did you have to write the whole thing, or did you just give them facts? Or?
So I obviously did the work. I then created the pictures and wrote a description of what I've done, so kind of a press release. That was then taken by the professional media people who made it sound nice and more acceptable for a wider audience, and then that was picked up by the journalist at New Scientist and other magazines who wrote an article on it.
Okay, cool. So, how far into your PhD are you?
So I'm in my second year, so I'm at the end of my second year, so I'll be going into my third year in October.
Okay, so you've got about a year, 2 years left, that kind of time. Yeah. So what are you doing in the rest of the time?
So far, the first year we did a small project, which is what is in the news article, which looked at a particular type of structure and evolution of a cloud of gas. The second year we've been taking that a step further by I've been writing my own code that deals with how the photons move within the cloud. And that's quite exciting because it allows us to do things that haven't been done in our code so far. And so the final part of my PhD is going to be taking that code, combining it with the work I've already been doing and doing some exciting new simulations that people haven't done so far. And so that's ongoing at the minute, and it's quite exciting.
So for your PhD, you have to write up like a thesis as well. If you started doing that, so thesis is like a end of PhD document kind of thing, isn't it? You have to hand in.
So it's kind of like a book, effectively. You take all your research and write it up for an audience, a scientific audience. It's not for the public.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it goes in the library and it'll stay there. It's like one of these documents that lasts forever with your little bit of history in. So I've started personally. So not everybody does start straight away, but I have for two reasons. The first is that it's good to get down what you've done, just because it's good to have it written down. But I think more importantly for me is that the way you learn where the holes in your knowledge are best are by trying to explain it to somebody else, and that's what you're trying to do. And I realised, in fact, during writing up my first year's work, a few extra things that I probably should have done because I realised that I couldn't really fully explain something, and so you really do benefit from that.
Yeah.
So I've done the first one chapter, and I'm working on a second chapter now, which is on this code, and for the same reason, as I write it up, I'll probably come across things that I should add, and it's better to do that now to the end.
Yeah.
However, a lot of people leave it at the end because it's probably in most cases true that most of your thesis and the best work you're doing happen in your third or final year.
Yeah.
And so some people say, well, there's no point writing everything up now because it's not going to be relevant. And so it's
there's a balance, isn't there, as well? You've got to do it at the right time, and okay, so apart from your research you do here, and you do the writing up and stuff like this, do you have to do any other duties and stuff?
Yeah, so you're not required as a PhD student to do anything else. You're not obligated to do anything. But most PhD students take on a role in teaching. So you'll go into undergraduate classes, help them with the work. So you'll either demonstrate or you'll mark work or things like that. And so the idea is we're specialised in our field, so we're able to pass that knowledge on.
Yeah.
So that's something most of us do, and that's true in most universities. Also, there's the option to do outreach, which some people choose to do. I personally do. So I believe the taxpayers pay for our PhDs, and so I think it's our almost a personal obligation to kind of spread that knowledge. We love science, we do science, we want to tell everybody about it, and so we should. And so I go out into schools around the Cardiff area. I talk to children, so pupils at schools, about the work I do and a bit about star formation, which is something you don't come across much in the curriculum, and it's actually quite exciting, and that they can see what a real scientist is rather than these stereotypical pictures in a lab. That we're not that weird, and we just do things that people really enjoy, and actually you get a really good response. A lot of children are really interested in what we do.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your typical day like? I mean, when do you come in, what do you do, when do you leave, what socialising do you do anything like that?
So I think this is like the question that plagues most PhD students, in that when you come to university, you do your undergraduate, it's very structured. But when you come to do a PhD, it's very much your PhD, and so you run it how you want. So some people choose to just have a life, which is consistent of everything, and it's all just one big stew of stuff. I choose to separate my time out, and so I've got a dedicated split between my work and my life.
Yeah.
And so I tend to come in between 9 and 10 every day. I'll spend the morning going over results from previous simulations. So I've always got simulations running, so they'll end, or if they end, I'll need to restart them because we've got a limited amount of time on the supercomputer, and so after 3 days they stop and I have to restart them. I also have to analyse results from previous simulations. So that's generally what I do in the morning, and respond to emails and things like that. And then have lunch, and then in the afternoon I spend time doing whatever else needs doing. So I'll create new initial conditions for new simulations that we haven't done, or I'll write a new piece of code or modify code, or write up some work, or do some outreach practice, or whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then we also have coffee twice a day, which is a chance for us all to socialise and relax. And people always think, coffee in the workplace is probably different to here, because we actually spend quite a bit of our coffee break talking about science, and that's how you learn about other people's fields. So obviously I know a bit about what you do, because we chat about that, and that's interesting because you want to know about other things, because you're very specialised in a PhD. And then we also have things like group meetings where we all meet as a group, a star formation group, and we talk about work from other departments, because there's no point just being specialised in your field. We need to understand what's going on in the field. There's no point in me figuring out that stars are formed through some really complicated progress, only to find out 2 weeks later that somebody did it 3 years ago, and I could have just completely skipped that step.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
have these meetings to do that. And then there's teaching, obviously, in afternoons when the term time happens.
Okay, thank you very much. So I hope that gives you a brief sort of view onto what a PhD is like and what scholarly research is and everything like this. So one final question, which I got asked once, and so I ask everybody, which is, I think, just a nice and open-ended question that you can answer at the end. So I ask you, what is your favourite planet?
Yeah, so I might be cheating here, because the planet I will choose is no longer a planet. So when I was born, in 1989, Pluto was a planet. And I like it's one of them funny things. It's kind of the reject of the planets, and I like the rejects.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I
vote for little guy.
so I would say that despite it not technically being a planet, I would still say Pluto.
That's fine.
Because
You were born when it was a planet. That's we can let you off for that one. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Check out the rest of the videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.